Good afternoon from the United Arab Emirates, from Dubai. My name is Fawzi Bawab, and it is a pleasure to be here with you today to discuss and talk about one of my favorite tools when we engage our teams in process mapping in Lean Six Sigma projects. Before we get started, maybe with the topic, let me share with you the objectives of the session. It's a short webinar where I will go through some of the elements of the SIPOC, which is our main topic for today, and how we can utilize it in certain projects where we need to actually do some kind of an improvement or process mapping. Again, welcome to the session. My name is Fawzi Bawab. I'm from Merck Training and Consulting. And just to start here, the webinar by saying that this webinar is recorded and will be shared on the Merck website and YouTube channel. So anytime you can go there and watch it again. It's free, of course, and you can always reflect on some of the ideas that we will be discussing. The agenda for today's session, which is a short session, is basically to start talking about the importance of the discussion. Why are we talking about the SIPOC? As I mentioned to you, it is one of my favorite tools, very high level, very simple to use with our teams, and it can get us lots of benefits before we get started with any project. We will talk about the SIPOC fundamentals. What does it mean to have a SIPOC? What are these letters? The S, the I, the P, the O, and C. And then, of course, we will be talking about the objectives and the uses of SIPOC. Where would we use it, and where would be the benefits of the SIPOC? We will then review the structure, how to start building a SIPOC. Probably maybe we'll take an example or two talking about how to build that SIPOC with the elements that we need. And then we will have, as we said, maybe a couple of examples just to illustrate how we can use it. In addition to the SIPOC, I've decided to include maybe something which we call the enhanced SIPOC, which we refer to sometimes as the turtle diagram. A fancy name, but it is a very useful tool as well that we get to use in addition to the SIPOC to add a couple of other elements to our discussion. Takeaways, and then maybe we will have a quick session of Q&A at the end of the session. Maybe the first thing that before I want to share with you the SIPOC is just to give you a little bit of brief of my company. It's called Merck Training and Consulting. I'm a partner with them, but Merck has been here for a while. Company started in 1958 and then moved to open offices in the region, starting from Beirut, moving to Dubai. Head office is in Dubai, but we have offices in the region, including Saudi, including other areas as well. We have a number of offerings. Main offerings are the public training and the in-house training and the consulting. So public training, where we offer different open sessions at different locations from Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Riyadh, Istanbul, London, Kuala Lumpur, and other areas. And then we have the in-house sessions where we basically fly into a specific country to deliver a certain solution in terms of training. We have over 26 categories of training to include more than 300 types of courses. So whether you want to brush up on your project management skills or presentation skills or customer service or quality or operational excellence, we've got many categories that you can select from. And of course, whether you want intermediate or advanced, we have these different types of courses. In addition to that, we offer consulting services. So we can offer strategy consulting, KPI consulting, HR and job description consultancy as well. So depending on the needs of the organization, we can always discuss their needs. As I mentioned, you can see in front of us 26 categories, which basically reflect the elements of the competencies that many people will need during their career. And whether you want to pick up on the project management or get the PMP, or maybe move to Six Sigma Green Belt, or move to contracts or banking, we have a number of these courses. So all you have to do is check our website, and then you'll see the long list of courses. Some of our courses are accredited, which means there is an exam or there is a project. So whether it is the Society for Human Resource Management or the American Society for Quality or Heriot-Watt University, some of our courses are under the accreditation and the banner. Fauzi, that's me. I'm an engineer by training. My civil engineering is my first degree, and this is where I got a passion for quality. I moved into operational excellence and quality. I did my master's in industrial engineering and eventually completed my PhD in operational excellence at Heriot-Watt University at Edinburgh Business School. And I'm keen on working with companies on quality, operational excellence, developing their competence in applying Lean Six Sigma projects. So that's where I've been spending my time. Before joining Merck, I used to work in the Canadian capital, Ottawa, with a company called KPMG, and then with a British Standard Institution, which is called BSI, moved to IBM as well as a quality manager, and also with Talal Abu Ghazali, one of the regional consulting companies in the Middle East. Moved to Dubai 2004, joined Merck, became a partner 2007, and right now I'm responsible for the offerings under the operational excellence and quality. Again, it is my pleasure to be here with you today, and I'm trying to transfer the knowledge and the experience I have in applying some of the tools in quality. And today I have chosen to talk about the SIPOC model. Now, why are we talking about the SIPOC? Well, basically, when you engage in any type of a project for improvement, you always need the understanding of the high-level components of the process. It is critical to achieve, maybe sometimes to scope, to better scope, to understand what's in, what's out, and to identify the elements of the process before and during improvement initiatives. So it gives us lots of information. Indeed, it is high level, but it can actually give us lots of other information sometimes when we discuss improvement initiatives. So this is the importance of the discussion. This is why we're using it. And now let's get to the core of the SIPOC. So what is it? It is a scoping tool. It is used in some projects such as the Six Sigma, where at the beginning of the project, we need to build a project charter, and we need basically to identify the components of the projects and the element of the process that we seek to improve. It can help to answer certain questions in terms of what's in, what's out, who is involved in the process, who is receiving the output, who are the stakeholders that should be involved in such a project. So many of these questions can be answered by using this tool. I've seen different like sort of shapes, ways how SIPOC is being used. Can I say it's wrong? No. We practitioners, we accept different types of shapes and sort of templates that we can use SIPOC at, and I'll share with you a couple of templates, but there is no wrong way or right way to use it. So it can come in tabular or graphical formats, and we will see some examples as such. So the SIPOC is basically a tool to try to understand who is the customer, and that gives you a hint that the C within the SIPOC is about the customer, and then the O is the output or outputs, and then of course we need to understand high level the P, which are the process and the steps that go into that process. So usually we would like to limit that to maybe 5, 6, 7 max steps in the P, which is the steps. And then, of course, reflecting on what are the required inputs and then who are the suppliers. So to take this into more detail, let's try to understand the steps. So here are some of the uses that we can use SIPOC for. For example, is to provide that high-level view of the process, sometimes called the forest view, the 30,000 feet view of the process. which is very useful, especially when you present these different type of presentations to executive management. Um, you can also use it to identify the process boundaries. You can use it to identify the customers and suppliers, and you can use it later on to establish the data collection methodology that you will use to collect information about all these elements and use them within your project. So these are the SIPOC uses. I mean, we can add to them, but these are the primary objectives and for using a SIPOC. So what is it? Well, there are different templates. One of them is what we refer to as the tabular format or the table format, which is in front of us. And it's basically trying to list and identify within the team that is formulating or putting the SIPOC to understand who are the different elements, who are the people in terms of customers or suppliers that are interacting with this process. So if you look at this process or the template here, it is important to start identifying the following. You might start with naming the process. What is naming of the process that is in question here or trying to analyze, and then understanding who are the customers. So we prefer that you can start probably at the customer's side once you identify the name of the process, and then you can work backwards to identify the outputs of the process and then list them, and then you move to the process steps, and then you can identify the inputs that are needed for the process to operate. Once you do that, you also can identify who are the providers of the process. So basically, it's identifying what we refer to as the X's that are important to understand in any process. The Y is basically the output, and then you've got the X's that will be part of the process inputs to try to be transformed, right? So there is a function which basically is the process, and this is one of the ways that we define processes. Basically, it is something that is transforming. It's creating that value added that we are using to generate and as an output, and whether it's information or a widget or any type of a service or a product that is being passed to our customers. So again, a SIPOC is a high-level map. The discussion basically happens with the team where there is maybe a charter. We call it the project charter, specifically maybe in some projects of Six Sigma, and then we start the identification process in terms of the steps, in terms of the outputs, and we start listing them within this table format, and hence we can use that as a way to understand what's happening inside the process and how we can transform it into maybe a more detailed process later on, right? Because the idea here is starting from the forest view and then moving maybe to the ground level. So mainly in some of the mapping exercises we do recommend that maybe you start from the high level, the forest view, and then identify the elements of the SIPOC, and then you can use a more detailed aspect of it, such as the swim lane or maybe the flow chart to identify the specific steps. So again, uses of the SIPOC could be used during the initial stages of any improvement project, such as the Lean Six Sigma projects, could be to identify the boundaries of a project or a process that we're working on, to give a presentation maybe to the upper management or the top management. And this is where it provides a very specific description of what's in, what's out. So inside this frame, we've got elements that might be outside, elements that might be inside the frame. So the SIPOC will immediately determine what are we working on, and you can then be very specific in terms of the project that you're working on. So it basically captures the scope, ensures that we have that discussion at the beginning with the stakeholders, and we ensure that you have a full scope identified at the beginning to avoid any issues later on. So basically, it is what's in, what's out, and you can use it for scoping as well, in addition to the other objective that we just talked about, which is the forest view or the high level view of the process. So these are some of the uses that we can use that. And in terms of a procedure to start doing the SIPOC, of course, you might want to get the team in. Usually it's done in a cross-functional team. And then the first step, as we said, could it be, if I go back to this chart here, you could start by naming the process, giving a description of the process. We would like to have a process which is defined at the beginning to ensure that you're not including too many sub-processes in that main process. So it's very clear that you're working with one specified process. So that's the first step that we see here. So if I go back to my procedure here, provide a description of the process, and that is what we call the function. Should be high level, anywhere between 5 to 7 steps. So the steps, as we will see now in the next example, they range between 5 to 7. You don't want to get into the details because that's for another tool, maybe the flow charting or the swim lane. We would like to start with the SIPOC mapping backwards. So I would like to start usually with the output, identify what are the specific outputs that this process is providing, whether it's information, whether it's report, whether it's a coffee, maybe you're making coffee. So again, it is the output that we seek from this process. And then we can ask about the customers, who are the specific customers that are receiving each of these process output. Then we go back and then we identify what we refer to as the inputs or X's, and then we identify the suppliers. So we prefer to do it backwards, just to ensure that when we go back, we are capturing all the outputs and then we're going back to the inputs. So this slide here just gives us a little bit of brief on the procedure and how it's done. Again, I emphasize that this is a team exercise. You would like to get the team in, you would like to get the engagement of the team, because that's one of the objectives as well, to get the team interaction and maybe to define a process together. So again, maybe some of your customers that you will identify in your SIPOC could be, they could be external customers, they could be internal customers. So you can do the SIPOC for an HR department, you can do it for an IT department, you can do it for a supply chain, or you can do it for a process that basically interacts directly with your external customers. So again, you have multiple ways where you can build this SIPOC, and you can identify different types of customers. Again, we, as I mentioned to you, we'd like to do it in teams to have the team say and to get people in. So that is one of the things that I like to do when I get the teams. I like to get the cross-functional team and we have that discussion, and then we map it together. And I'll start showing you some examples now on how the mapping happens. So different templates are available for us to start our SIPOC. This is a template where you can see here, you can start filling in the details. And as we said, first thing that you would like to do is write down here the process description. What is it that you're trying to work on? And then I would start with with the outputs. So what are the specific outputs? Sometimes we may have multiple outputs, right? So we might have coffee, for example, which is the actual coffee that we drink. But then a secondary output would be the paste, the leftovers from the coffee. So that could be another type of a output that we could get. And then I would identify who are the customers that are receiving. You could have multiple customers, you can have one customer. So again, the discussion here will reveal where are your customers. Now, we would like to identify the process steps high level. So what's the first step that should happen? You record it here, second, third. As we said, 5 to 7 usually is good enough. You don't want to go into the more detailed one, because again, that might be for another tool. Once you do that, then you have your inputs identified. It could be raw material, it could be information, it could be any type of an input that you need and will trigger the process to operate. And then you've got your suppliers here listed. So they could be the other departments, maybe providing you with other information, or it could be an external supplier providing you with raw material or information or a report. You need to identify them there. There's an addition here. You can even add enablers. That could be machinery, that could be resources. And this section here will trigger later on the discussion of the enhanced SIPOC, right? So there's a SIPOC that we will call enhanced using another tool called the turtle. So again, if you have any questions, you can send them to the chat now or later on, and at the end of the session I will definitely answer any questions that you may have on the slides. So here's again the template, and you get the team in and you say, okay, what's the name of the process? You record it here. You start with your output. So this is a tabular format where you can start listing 1, 2, 3, depending on the process that you're working on. And then who are the customers that are receiving it, right? And then you can start here listing down what we call the high level process description. So as we said, 5 to 7 steps, right? Once you identify them, it could be a graphical steps, or it could be listing it. I'll show you now an example, and then you can just list here the inputs and write them down, and then maybe the also the suppliers as well. So it's a tool to identify, it's a tool to understand what are the elements that are coming inside my process. Here is an example. I'm making a breakfast, and as we've seen here, this is a completed format. What would be the name of the process? Well, it is making breakfast. Top level process steps. I would start here and I say, okay, breakfast will include, maybe I'm a hotel, I'm doing, room service or creating a breakfast for someone. So what would be the outputs that I seek to have in my breakfast? Well, there's a hot coffee. There's hot water, there's oatmeal, there's the bowls and spoons and cups, right? And then there is food ready to eat, and then maybe there is a clean kitchen. So an output of the process is you need to clean the kitchen as well. So now, who is responsible for all of this? Or sorry, who is getting out the hot coffee and the hot water? So you can see here, seems to be this is a family event rather than a hotel event. So you can see the wife, the husband, you can see the whole family is involved, and they're getting so whole family is getting food ready to eat, and then unfortunately the guy here, not maybe it should be the husband cleaning the kitchen, but they put the wife. Now we go back and then we have the listing. So making coffee, heating water, pour in oatmeal, watch time, get balls, serve oatmeal, clean up. So these are the high level activities that should happen. Now you could have them in another format, like a visual format. What are the inputs that are needed to start my job? So here, probably coffee beans, depending on the coffee that you're making, water, stove, measured amount of oatmeal, water boiling. These are all milk, right? If you're using that as well. And then all of this is coming in to create the SIPOC that you have. And you can see here, the providers are all myself, right? So you can see here that what is the scope of the project that we are involved in. Another maybe example to try also to show you a different format. This is one of my favorites, by the way. I like it because when we use it within our teams, we can get it on a smart screen. We can do it on a flip chart, landscape size, and we basically, again, identify what is the name of the process, and then we can start here listing down all the outputs, and you can see here the customers, right? And you can see here the overview, the high level process. So as we said, we try to stick to 5 to 7. You can see here 5 main steps, and you can see here the start and the end. Inputs are here, and then the suppliers who are sending us all of the other information or parts as well. So one of my favorite things, because this is graphical, we get people to get on the flip chart or smart screens. They have their markers, they have their post-it, and they really produce fancy, well, not fancy, but really beautiful SIPOCs that can get the team to be engaged. This is the tabular format. This is for a medical claim. An insurance company maybe gets claims. So you can see one of the suppliers here is a hospital that sends in the medical claim. One of the requirements is for it to be complete. So whether you're using, digital entry or hard copies, and then you've got all the steps here, and then you've got the outputs, which is what's your job is to do the processing for the claims and then issue the payment for the hospitals, right? Because that's the job for the insurance company. So this is like a medical claim processing for an insurance company, and you can see hospitals is identified as a supplier because they do send the information for the medical claim, and then they do get eventually the amount paid for the services they delivered for the beneficiaries of the insurance. And you can see here, you have also multiple customers where even the claim data is fed to the IT, where they have to maybe verify it and keep it for future records. So again, this is what we call the tabular format. And here is one of the groups that we worked with. They did this, as I told you, one of my favorite graphs is to get it in a graphical format. And you can see here the same logic, which is now the process is called execution of a project for product XX. And you can see here how the main steps are, 7 steps. And you can see here the output and the customer as well. So same logic applies. It takes time. I mean, you get with the team, a couple of hours, you can produce a well-defined SIPOC in this sense. We have seen enhanced SIPOC. So what is the enhanced SIPOC? When you are developing the SIPOC, you may have other questions. For example, you might start asking about what we refer to as the resources, the enablers, who's doing what, the people. Do you have any measurements that you would like to add to the SIPOC? So you could measure maybe how effective is the process, how efficient is the process. So using SLAs, using KPIs, some of the common language for understanding how a process is behaving. So maybe here I have this multiple steps, and I like to understand what a certain activity is doing using the enhanced SIPOC. So I can take this and then I can zoom into that step and I can create something called the turtle diagram. So the turtle diagram, someone decided that it looks like a turtle, and they said, we can use it to understand the enablers and the relationship of our process. In addition to the SIPOC, I can do a turtle to understand the resources, the policies and procedures, the people that are doing it, and of course the measurements. So let me explain this with a chart or a graph, because then it will make sense. Here is our famous turtle, and you can see the turtle here where everything is fed to the process. Remember, turtle is a process, and then we basically produce something, right? Which is information reports. Now, what type of resources do we need? I mean, is it equipment? And what type of equipment do we need? Tools as well. How would we describe the process? Which basically takes me to the methods, procedures, policies, and relevant documentation. Who is doing the job? This is the part that you see here, which is the personnel, their level of training, and what do we need in terms of competence for the process to operate. And then eventually what are we measuring? How can you measure the results of the process in terms of output, compliance, customer satisfaction, efficiency, speed, waste? All of these factors could be used as a way to measure any type of a process in any function in any industry. So we can use it to examine any process. We can use it to collect information on any type of a process for the sake of improvement. But then when we bring the turtle and add it to the SIPOC, the tool that we just discussed, then we may start to have an enhanced SIPOC. So here is, an internal audit process. I'm trying to describe the internal audit that we do in an organization, but then I am using a combination of a SIPOC and a turtle. That's why we're calling it now the enhanced SIPOC. So as you can see here from the graph, you can see that already the process is here. These are the steps. Output is defined, customers are defined, inputs, which is our SIPOC. But then you've got this one, which is the additional thing, as we mentioned, the resources, the people, responsibility, the methods, and then the results. And you can see here that we're using some measurable KPIs as well. So this becomes my enhanced SIPOC, if you may, which basically adds more information to our traditional SIPOC. Very interesting. It's a tool to get information. It's a tool to discuss the elements. It's a tool to do scoping, and it's a tool that we can share with our team and top management to try to explain a process with all the details. And remember, we're doing it sometimes to do what? To do improvement. I mean, the whole aim of these tools is to try to gain more understanding so we can do improvements. Just something here, make sure to SIPOC your improvement project before you get started to help you stay focused. I've seen many maybe teams projects, they get off tangent, they start working on something else because maybe they didn't have a defined scope. So having the SIPOC or enhanced SIPOC or the turtle within your discussion is really useful just to keep you focused and you wouldn't go off tangent in such projects. So always start with SIPOC in your improvement projects. Try to define the scope. It will guide you to ask the right questions. And of course, the answers will help you then make decisions. And I suggest and highly recommend that you use it with teams to align what we're trying to do and to get their engagement. And use the graphical format, if you may, or the tabular format. I mean, there is no wrong or right way to do it, but that is my 2 cents in terms of how to use the SIPOC and how to start using it within your teams. That basically brings me to the end. I mean, we do discuss many of these tools, the SIPOC, the turtle, in many of our training courses at Merck Training and Consulting. So feel free to check them at our website. And whether you're doing a process mapping course or a quality management course as well, or Six Sigma, feel free to check that as well. So any questions, any things that you would like to get answered, feel free to send them to the chat, and I'll be more than glad to basically answer your questions. Thank you for being with us, and I hope you enjoyed this short webinar, which is recorded, so you can go back and maybe listen to it again if you need to. You can also send me any question on my email, which is on the screen as well, if you have a specific question about the topic. Again, thank you. If you have any questions, shoot it on the chat, and it will be my pleasure to try to answer them. Okay. thank you. Thank you very much for being with us today. I hope you enjoyed the session. I hope wasn't long, but that's what we're trying to do to provide these quick webinars just to enhance knowledge and give ideas for people to try to use at their operations. Um, Thank you. No questions on the chat so far, so I will be thanking you again and saying goodbye, and hopefully we will meet soon in some of our future courses at Merck Training and Consulting.